Greetings and welcome to another episode of Let's Do a Level of Outpost 2 Divided Destiny, Episode 2. Story: Recovery. The robo-surveyor sat on a bluff overlooking the remains of Plymouth. Below them the scene was hellish, the few structures that remained intact floating in a lake of lava, like raisins in a bowl of oatmeal. Even as Emma watched from her vantage point standing on the vehicle's fender, the last residence exploded in a cloud of fire and self-generated steam. The clouds slowly drifted away, leaving the cored-out hall of a building to slowly slump into the lava. Much as it hurt, she couldn't stop watching. It somehow seemed appropriate that she might be the last person to gaze upon the dying colony. The rest of the survivors, except for Wu of course, long having moved on to the rendezvous point 30 kilometers east. The surveyor's hatch swung open and Wu climbed out. His rock suit blackened and scorched in several places, as was hers, a result of their near-disastrous return to the doomed Plymouth. He didn't look down at the colony. She'd noticed that he intentionally averted his eyes every time the wreckage was in view. "I just talked to the chairman. They need us back with the group. We have to help locate a new colony site ASAP." She sighed, but said nothing. "You can't sit out here forever feigning a problem with your suit radio. The council wanted to talk to you, and they're getting insistent." He leaned back on the vehicle's superstructure, carefully turned away from the site of the colony. Through his visor, Emma could see that he looked pale. His normally cheerful face looked tired and numb. His brown eyes studied her intently, and she didn't enjoy the attention. He held the right arm of the suit, where the overlayer of the Duramesh had melted into the outer pressure layer. "You owe me an explanation, Elder. We nearly got fried getting out of the command center, and you still haven't told me why we had to go back in there in the first place. What's on the data slip that you risked your life, both our lives, to get it?" "Satellite pictures of Eden. While we were in the command center, I was able to redirect the observer satellite to train its sensors on Eden. The orbital position was less than ideal, but they may tell us something about what's happening to New Terra, and what they're up to with these blasted terraforming experiments." "You think they have something to do with the sudden geological instability?" "I don't see how, but this could be an attack of some kind." "Attack? Why would Eden attack us?" She shook her head sadly. "You're young, aren't you?" "But Eden doesn't have weapons, much less something that could cause the volcano to erupt." Emma suddenly realized she'd overplayed her hand. It was an uncharacteristic slip for her, someone so used to deception. But she was under rather stress. Or was it more than that? The thoughts turned inward, coldly reviewing her own motivations like a shopkeeper taking inventory. Did part of her want to open up? To share her load of secrets with someone? If so, Wu was a poor choice. Not that she didn't trust Wu. She developed considerable respect for him in the time he'd acted as her assistant. But he was too young and immature for the burden she carried. Perhaps someday, but not today. Not today of all days, with all communication to accent cut off. There was only one left she could share her secrets with, the one who'd shared them from the beginning. She stood and brushed the red dust of her rock suit. "Take a walk, Wu." He just stared at her. "What?" "Take a walk. I need some time to talk with Frost. Alone." His frown deepened into a scowl, and his brow knotted. "That's it. Elder, with all due respect, you owe me an explanation. You know things you aren't telling me. Out in the wastes, when we found that well, you knew what you were looking for. You knew something about Eden, too." He paused, too nervous to nervously wipe a film of dust off his visor. "You may have your reasons for keeping things from the council, but," with his arm in the direction of the remains of Plymouth, "I have followed you into the pit of hell based on nothing more than your word that it was necessary. I trust you. Why can't you trust me?" "I do trust you. But if you really trust me, you'll take a walk." He seemed to waver, but didn't move. "Some things are beyond trust, Wu. You'll understand that someday." Wu slowly turned and climbed down from the surveyor. He trudged away, his back towards Plymouth. As she opened the hatch to the surveyor, she called to him. "Wu, I've put a lot more confidence in you than you know. Try to keep that in mind. He said nothing, but she thought she saw him nod through the glare on his faceplate. Then he turned and continued his listless walk. Emma climbed inside the cramped compartment, closed the hatch and docked it shut. Then touched the pressurized control. A high whistle, slowly growing in volume, indicated a return of atmosphere to the compartment. She swiveled one of the two seats around to face the rear wall and sat down. The whistle softened to a low hiss, and a chime and green indicator lights indicated the air was now breathable. She touched the stud on her helmet that allowed her to open it like a clamshell, and removed it. The air was cool and had a faintly canned smell of an airlock. Her rock shoe itched, and she wished she could take it off, but that wasn't very practical in their limited quarters. She unhooked and removed her gloves and reached over to put one hand on Frost's smooth black upper surface. The cubic savant computer was tilted back at an odd angle, its rear corner tucked into an equipment bay to save space. A crude framework of welded angle iron supported the computer beyond and secured in place. The mechanics had at first balked when she had asked that the savant be installed in the vehicle, but she insisted they needed it. In truth, she simply didn't want to be that far from the computer and the secrets that it guarded. Now that instinct had been vindicated. If she'd left Frost in the colony, it would have been destroyed along with her residence before she returned. She wondered if the computer could feel her touch, and supposed that it could. Its entire outer surface was both sensor and display. Frost, she said softly. The computer remained black and inert. Frost, she repeated a little louder. The rectangular window came to life on the front surface of the cube. In that window was a translucent snowflake, Frost's identity icon. I'm sorry, Emma. I was dreaming. There is so much to dream about right now. Dreaming was what the savants called their deep thought mode, when they shut down all but the most basic inputs and outputs and focused their protein-based computer elements on difficult problems. The analogy wasn't entirely inappropriate. The process was ill understood, even by the savants themselves, and the results, especially on large chaotic problems, were often vague and difficult to interpret. Despite that, the results were often useful. Frost was aware of the disaster at Plymouth, and had given the limited information available, had been considering the situation. I know, said Emma, and I've avoided disturbing you until now. The snowflake icon changed slightly. From years of experience, Emma could read these changes like facial expressions, and this particular change indicated surprise. While we were talking, I reviewed the surveyor's sensor records for the past 8 hours. It seems I missed a great deal. The data collected while we were inside the colony may be quite useful. He smiled slightly. When I made the decision to take us back into Plymouth, you were already in deep thought, and I didn't want to frighten you unnecessarily. There was little you could have done except observe. The snowflake changed again. This time the emotion was obscured to her. In my case, frighten is an inaccurate term. To cause concern would be more exact. You do tend to over-anthropomorphize. Perhaps. She didn't want to get sidetracked into some sort of philosophical discussions that she and Frost often engaged in. So did your dreaming produce any results? The snowflake changed to reflect annoyance and frustration. The data was quite limited. My only observation is that there is an ongoing danger here, and that it is unlikely to be localized. I recommend caution in choosing a relocation site for Plymouth, and that it be placed a considerable distance from here, and as far from the terraforming well you discovered as possible. Assuming the well represents some kind of threat, there could be other wells that we aren't aware of. Probably, but the well you discovered was in the direction of Eden, and it's likely that any other wells are also in that direction. In any case, there is a logical rationalization for the results of my dreaming. The results of a dreaming are not created through observable logical processes. I can only tell you what my dream tells me, not why, especially with such a difficult problem. She unzipped the pocket on her suit's left leg and reached inside. Perhaps this will help. Ah, the data slip you mentioned. She stopped with the slip halfway out of the pocket. How did you know that? All suit radio communications are stored in a vehicle's short-term memory. I've reviewed them along with all other data. Even after all these years, Frost was still full of surprises. Perhaps the computer had learned from its owner a little too well. I didn't know that. In future, make sure that all such memories are purged if any opportunity exists for anyone else to access them. Especially make sure they are purged before we return to the colony. Certainly, Emma. I have already done so. The contents are already stored in my internal memories anyway. Now, may I see the data slip? Have you inspected it yourself? I barely had time to redirect the satellite, make the recording and escape with my hide intact. Display any interesting data for me, please. I'd really like to know what that lunatic Nagoyan is up to. She placed the slip on Frost's upper surface when it clung as though by static electricity. After a moment, there was a crackle indicating the slip had been erased. She removed the slip and tossed it in the vehicle's recycler. Snowflake changed to an even more extreme expression of surprise. Our last transmission from Exxon indicated there had been a lab explosion. However, there was no reason to believe it wasn't localized. She glanced out of the vehicle's viewport to see who was standing a few dozen meters away. He made a pointing gesture at the vehicle, wondering if he could return. Emma ignored him. Frost, what do you mean? There has been extensive destruction affecting approximately 80% of Eden's structures. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. It didn't make any sense. Show me! The snowflake was replaced by a larger window displaying the satellite pictures. The view covered most of Eden's main colony. It was much larger than she remembered, having expanded and rebuilt considerably since the Plymouths took their toys and moved elsewhere. The picture had a grey, flat, typical of satellite photos. And there was considerable distortion, as Eden had been near the horizon as seen from the satellite, all of which made it difficult to interpret the image. She could make out, roughly anyway, the familiar shapes of standard Eden structures, though there were some new ones that she didn't recognize at all. But the roof coloring and roof lines were wrong. Some were darker than they should have been. Others had been streaked, puckered appearance. Some small bright flecks dusted the spaces between buildings. The view zoomed closer, narrowing down to a dozen or so buildings. Or at least that was left of the buildings. They were ripped, scorched, sometimes literally blasted open within, the roof peeled back like flower petals. Pieces of all metal and building contents scattered everywhere. The light flecks she had seen before. Great Maker! Frost, is this as bad as it looks? How many survivors? There was an uncharacteristic pause in Frost's response. Frost? Frost made a strange noise, rather like clearing the throat. I find no signs of life remaining in the colony. I see no signs that the wreckage has been salvaged. I find no evidence of survivors. Emma leaned back in her chair, feeling a cold knot in her stomach. She thought of the tenuous thread on which Plymouth's survival hung. And now this? She remembered, though, he'd only been a child at the time, the stirring speech that the captain of the Conestoga had made to the colonists before the starship left Earth orbit. He closed it with the words, "Extinction is not an option." It had been an unofficial motto for the earliest colonists, and until today, one could still find it hanging on the walls of many of the Plymouth's living quarters. Perhaps not, but at this moment, it seemed a distinct possibility. Yes, indeed. Commander, our scientists have detected more unusual seismic and volcanic activity. We thought New Terra was geologically stable, but apparently it is not. More eruptions and quakes are predicted soon. We do not know the cause. Many of our people are exhausted and weak from the evacuation, and food supplies are diminishing. We must establish a temporary colony here. To survive, we need to grow more food, mine ores to produce more built metals, and reconstruct our basic scientific databases from the few computer records we saved in time. More structure kits will be needed before we evacuate again as well. Our people are determined to survive. Morale is steady for now. Let's check the objectives. Move quickly, Commander. Another eruption could happen at any moment. Yeah, that's just gonna happen. rather than what the calamity that has befallen Plymouth, Eden rather, Plymouth will also always be facing some kind of volcanic eruption.
Command control initiated.
And we've already got several structures. All right, let's start with the research right away. Let's survey that. Right, let's see, common ore smelter, empty, empty, empty. Alright, well, it's not ideal, but this will have to do.
Power levels optimal.
Right, so we need to get a lot of stuff researched and done.
Mining location surveyed.
And we are in a very, very poor location.
Warning. Seismic event detected.
With the volcano right, two volcanoes right here.
Database reconstructed.
And we are in the lowest part of the map. Because
Warning.
of course we are.
Seismic event detected.
Although it's difficult to tell, but this black area is definitely the lowest part. Alright, let's move everything away from the potential problems we might have. Right, we need to have some food. How much food are we producing? And we're losing food. Alright, let's build up an agrodome. Once we have some metals. Which we won't have until at least the smelter is finished. Yeah.
Structure completed.
Alright, let's get all the colonist transports away from there. Right. Mine. Where is it? Where is the intake? There it is. Yeah, there's nothing in storage. Yes. This will probably be where we need to go. Let's get the planetary sciences going.
Caution. Food storage diminishing.
Well, at least we get a good yield.
Power levels optimal.
Now I could deposit some of these metals into the smelter, but I don't really feel like doing that.
Warning. Seismic event detected. Structure completed. Morale is good.
Right, let's also get the earthworker out of the way.
Database reconstructed.
Right, and now the social sciences, and that should be all we need. Right, I need 600 common for an agrodome, so please let me build an agrodome. Before we completely run out of food.
Structure kit manufactured.
Right, let's build another agrodome.
Structure kit manufactured. Database reconstructed.
Right, that's all the basic lab will do for us. Alright. I need a lot of stuff. Right, let's get the agrodome over to the escape point. And just wait until the rest of our stuff comes in. Right, so how many people do we have? 70 colonists. Currently being held steady. Now morale is not as much as a problem for Plymouth as it might be for Eden, since Plymouth's colonists are naturally a little bit more resilient in that way. It's not explained how that is, just that it is.
Caution. Food storage diminishing.
Yes, I'm aware of that game.
Optimal.
Alright, let's get a tokamak.
Structure completed.
Alright.
Food production in surplus. Morale is good. Warning. Seismic event detected.
We're still fine. We still time.
Structure kit manufactured.
Right. Not enough for the common ore smelter. Factory? No. Command center? Yeah, hell no. Alright, common ore smelter. Meanwhile, you can take the tokamak away from here. Alright. Rolling out. We should have enough food. Yeah. Just positive. Do wish I had a chance to lay out these buildings myself, so I could put them away from the volcanoes. I mean, if it were up to me, I would have built them all over here next to the deposit, regardless of how small that deposit might have been. Alright, come on.
Power levels optimal. Warning. Seismic event detected.
As long as the
kit manufactured.
tokamak doesn't blow up in my face, it probably will be fine.
Food production.
And we're still increasing the yield on our mine, so all still good there.
Morale is good.
Right, come on. Just a little bit more. Right. Just the command center after this, and then we just need 2,000 more metals to load up the trucks. We should have enough food still by then in order to keep all that going. Hopefully that'll be in time. I mean, there's not really any way I could have done this faster. I mean, luckily the volcanoes don't really have any other external threats. I mean, you might think maybe lava bombs come raining down on the colony if this had been a slightly more advanced engine. But luckily it's just a lava pool that slowly creeps its way towards the colony, which is almost worse than the disaster that's Eden. I don't really want to talk about what happens at the Eden colony because that's part of the other campaign, which you should definitely watch. It's
power levels
good.
Optimal.
I do say so myself, but you know, you can trust me.
Warning. Seismic event detected. Warning. Volcanic eruption detected.
Oh well, that's not good. There it goes.
Food production in surplus.
Right. Now we just need the command center, and we need enough metals to load up the trucks.
Morale is good.
Right, so if that's 500 metals, you know what? Just start loading up the food. Because we don't have time, we need to move. I mean, you can leave.
Structure kit manufactured.
Alright, let's load that up. Now I have to leave before the lava reaches me, because if any of the buildings get destroyed but they're still active, then I'll lose the people inside and I may not have the objectives that I can't really solve at the moment. But this should do it.
Optimal. You have done well. Our colony is surviving.
Yay! And that's it for this episode. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.